Episode 8, Broken Windows, Open Doors, is so good. It's a masterwork of character building, and I would say the plot and subplot of this particular episode was emotionally connective. It brings the various towns' residents more into focus, revealing their backstory. In this episode you really do feel yourself starting to connect with these characters more, especially the character Boyd, played by Perrineau. His acting is so powerful and really does add a certain gravitas to the show because of how good he is at playing these kinds of roles. This episode was a reminder of the heartbreaking events these people have gone through. It really did punctuate to us, the audience, that the residents of this town are seriously traumatized. So let's start to break this episode down. I'll start by saying, even though this episode wasn't as action-packed as episode 7, I don't believe it had to be. For me it felt balanced, and was a perfect way for us, the audience, to become more invested in the plight by the various characters we've grown to know. Which is a good thing for any horror picture. In episode 7 we left off with Father Cautry being struck fatally in the neck by one of the creatures and seemingly to pass away on the floor. This episode picks up with Boyd dealing with that trauma in the only way he knows how, and that is to try to figure out a solution to help everyone get back home. Dealing with the grief of losing his friend Father Cautry has clearly shaken Boyd. This event seems to remind him of his wife that he had lost, and pulls us, the audience, into a flashback on how him and his family got stuck in the town. For me, the first part of this flashback was so enjoyable to watch. To see how Boyd and his family got along so well, with their funny conversation and interactions about a boat, was a joy to watch, because it added a certain levity to a scene we knew would have dark implications later on. Meanwhile, in between the flashbacks, Jim Matthews and Jade continue their quest to build a radio antenna high enough to broadcast a signal to the outside world, which leads them to make a request of Donna to build the antenna on top of the colony house, that being the highest spot in the town. I have to say, the relationship between Jim and Jade is hilarious. They seem more like brothers. They're both intelligent, but one is more socially functional than the other. Back at the Matthews home, Tabitha reveals to Julie for the first time the tragic details behind Thomas, her younger brother's death, and how that loss had figuratively broke something inside her that she had no idea how to fix. To me, even though this part was small, the impact was emotionally immense, and seemed to reverberate through the entire episode. And you can really see why that tragic moment put a strain on the entire family. The way it happened was truly a heartbreaking tragedy. In another flashback we see Boyd and his family get stuck in the town during the time of twilight as the sun goes down, and this is their first interaction with Father Cautry, who I have to say was amazingly calm, and to watch the way he had his conversation with them to convince them that they were in mortal danger was intense, especially watching how Boyd's wife pulls out a weapon. Wow, his wife is packing, but how he convinces them to follow him to safety was so good, he deserves a medal. It was during these times that we really find out how much Boyd was an integral part of the survival of this town. It was riveting to see how he statistically viewed the town's plight and came up with possible solutions. He believed if the townspeople worked together they could accomplish great things. On top of that, during this flashback we learned it was Boyd who found the goats and the various farm animals. Boyd also organized the people into a more cohesive group, and stockpile all their various supplies to ration it out for everybody. But most importantly, he was the one who found the protective talismans, single-handedly changing the town's dynamics. He really did hold this group together, and this was good to see. He was the highest definition of what a true leader looks like. Even though the town was growing with more hope thanks to Boyd's leadership, there was also a tragic darkness building that was happening to Boyd's wife. We come to think of the creatures as being the most dangerous part of this town, but it has been stated this town does something to the mind by destroying it in unexplained ways. So, even though Boyd's wife looked like she was incredibly strong, the town's nightmarish environment was stronger, driving her insane and causing her to do the unspeakable, causing her to start killing the people in town. Because of her actions, this would leave Boyd with no choice but to put his own wife down. This was truly a shocking moment, which would explain the rift between Boyd and his son. During the times between flashbacks it was Kenny Lou who really started to find his voice. He stepped up in a big way to ease the tensions between the townspeople and the colony house. The show winds down with Boyd's son and his father coming to some sort of resolution about the past, and ends with Boyd and Sarah venturing out into the unknown to find a way back home. Okay, I really enjoyed this episode. To me it was strangely satisfying. It filled in a lot of questions we may have had. The mystery is still paramount in this episode, which lead us all to ask more questions, which is great. There's so much to unpack, especially when it revealed new details about the creature's evolving behavior. The creatures seem to have changed over time from an even more animalistic monster that had a nightmarish howl, to now a more sophisticated or civilized version of this monster. Why the abrupt change? It's all so cool and weird. There's so much to explore. But I have to end this video. I really enjoyed episode 8. Tell me what you think, guys. How did you like this episode? Leave your comments below, and thanks for watching.